Pirkei Avot. Havei mitpalel l'shlomo shel malchut. We have to be constantly in the welfare of the government. And of course, now we have witnessed once again the transition, the orderly transition to some degree, to a great degree, from one administration to another, which is the hallmark of our democracy in our nation. And so we should, all of us, I believe, make sure that when we daven, that we have that in mind. You know, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, who was the great founder of the Musar movement in Europe, he said that he used to go from town to town to town in Europe, trying to spread the idea of self-discipline, musar, an entire movement about how we can learn to discipline ourselves. And he always said the tefillah l'shlom hamedina. There are various versions of a prayer for the welfare of a country or for the land in which one lives. And he always did it, tried to make sure he was there with them when they did say the tefillah. And if they didn't say the tefillah, he would go in a corner and he would say it himself. So let's hope and pray that, in fact, we will see blessing. It doesn't mean we're always going to agree with everything, but it does mean that we have to be grateful for the government itself, and then hopefully that it will act in accordance with our best interests and for hopefully the best interests of good people everywhere. Okay, that's my sermon for today. Today is Parshat Bo. I mean, not today, but this coming Shabbos is Parshat Bo. And the Torah calls in these early mitzvot. Remember, the first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people as a whole was Kiddush HaChodesh, the mitzvah of proclaiming the new month, and that Nisan would be the first month of the Jewish calendar year, at least certainly in terms of kings and the establishment of kings in certain areas. And of course, Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei is considered the new year for all of humankind. So the Torah first gives us the first mitzvah that we really have is the mitzvah of counting time. Why counting time? Because there are certain people who have no concept of time because they don't need it. One are children, 3 years old. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? They have no concept of time, and so therefore they need assistance. The other group of people who have no concept of time because they have no need for time are slaves. Slaves need to work until they're finally permitted to stop. So the Torah told us and gave us the first mitzvah of HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. It's yours. Time is yours now. Up until now, the Medrash says, I counted. Now you will count. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us the calendar dates that we are to celebrate: Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Rosh Chodesh, and we are given the license to be able to determine which day is the 14th of Nisan. When does the first day of Nisan begin? So now with our calendars that we have now, which are not calibrated to determination through sighting, visual sighting. So now we have, of course, the calendar which is calculated years and years in advance to include all of the nuances that a Jewish calendar has to have. Which days we can have, the Rosh Hashanah can fall out, which days the Purim cannot fall out, etc., etc. And also in terms of the early mitzvot, we learned something very important, and that is we as Jews are custodians of Jewish history. What do I mean by custodians of Jewish history? The Torah tells us in Peric Gimmel, Pasuk Gimmel, let me pull this out, Peric Gimmel, Pasuk Gimmel, the Torah tells us, Zachor, remember that we are to remember the days that we went out of Mitzrayim. Vayomer Moshe el ha'am zachor, not zichor, but zachor, as the mitzvah is on Shabbos as well. Zachor et Yom Shabbat, et Yom Hazeh asher yitzatem mi Mitzrayim. You are to do this every day. Rashi says, when it says Zachor et Hayom Hazeh, it says Limeid shemaskirin yitziat Mitzrayim b'chol yom. From here we learn that a Jew is duty bound to remember and to actually utter the fact that we were taken out of Mitzrayim, Yitziat Mitzrayim, every day. And we do it. We do it in the morning between Kriyat Shema, numerous places, but primarily between Kriyat Shema and Shemona Esrei in the morning and in the evening itself. And so we have that mitzvah to do every day, not just on Pesach. It's a mitzvah literally to utter it and to remember. To remember is the most important thing, and that means it's sort of like a subliminal memory that we have, certain subliminal memory that I remember once I heard a shir from Rabbi Yoshi Bar Soloveitchik in which he said that the word la'asok b'divrei Torah, for us to be completely immersed in the study of Torah, means, he said, like a mother, where no matter where she goes, no matter what she's doing, wherever she's going, or a business person, no matter where that person is going, if he owns a business, it's always here. It's never far from the memory, never far from a certain acknowledgement. So the Torah tells us that. But then the Torah also gives us another requirement. We are not only the custodians of Jewish history, but we also are to utilize vision, to see the world not as it is, but as it could or should be. Those are the two things. Now, these are parallel to the mitzvot, to the gifts that Hashem has given to all human beings. Right? Those, all of us have specifically two remarkable gifts. One is, as I said before, is memory. We are to remember things. We have a mitzvah to reconstruct that which once was and may not be here now. Quite possible. That's the mitzvah that we may have. And so therefore, for example, we have Zecher LaMikdash. In our calendar, we have the obligation to remember what the Beit HaMikdash was and to reconstruct. And all of us have that ability. We all do that. If God forbid we have loved ones that we have lost, or there were good times that are no longer here, sometimes we can amuse ourselves by reconstructing it in the past. So in that sense, we're custodians of the past. And the Torah tells us, use this memory, this gift of memory that God has given you on a national level. Zachor et Yom Tzeitcha me'eretz Mitzrayim. But then we have another gift, all of us, and that is the gift of vision. The gift of vision is to construct things that never were and to bring them to life within our minds. That is vision. To vision a world not as it is or as it was, but as it could or should be. And so even here in the Torah, right away when Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us the mitzvot, we have another mitzvah here. And actually toward the end of Peric Gimmel, right at Maftir, the Haya, and it shall be. Ki yishalcha mincha machar. Machar doesn't mean tomorrow, but it means in the future. If your child asks you in the future to say, Mazot, what is all of this that we're doing on the Seder night? This all has to do with the Seder night. We recall, of course, in the Haggadah itself, these verses are recorded for us. The Amarta elav, and you shall say to him, Chozek yad hotzianu Hashem miMitzrayim ibeit avadim, with strong authority, strong hand. But yad here does not mean a hand, but it means with great authority. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim from the house of servants. So those are the two elements that between which Judaism and Jewish life hinges on the zachor, on the remembering, and on the future. Ki yishalcha bincha machar, that your child should ask you, or any child. Now, I noticed that the Siftei Chachamim says exactly how do we derive that we're supposed to remember the Yetziat Mitzrayim every day, because it is written Zachor with a kamatz underneath it. It's written Zachor with a kamatz. I'll put that down for you so you can see it. 1 second. Usually it's written just Zachor, but here we see it written Zachor, as in Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. That the Meforshim say it's written in the infinitive, to remember. So I always wonder how do they get these terms in English? The infinitive, is that just to throw us off course and make us not understand? No, but if you think about it, infinitive is a wonderful descriptive word. It means it has no time. Finite has to do with time. Infinitive, it's neither past, nor present, nor future. It's all of those combined. That's why the Torah uses the term here, Zachor. You should be in a constant state of memory. Okay? Now we're going to turn to toward the end of our parsha, Peric Gimmel, the same Peric that we've been analyzing until now. Peric Gimmel, Pasuk Chet, and we have here a very, very interesting pasuk. We're pretty much familiar with it from Pesach itself. All right, in the Haggadah, it records this pasuk: "V'higadta levincha," and you shall tell your child, Bayomahu, on that day, meaning Lemor, Pesach, Ba'avur zeh, because of this, Asa Hashem li b'tzeiti mi Mitzrayim. Hashem did this for me when I left Mitzrayim. Now, this is a sort of a difficult pasuk, but before we get into the difficulty, I think it really pays for us to hear something that Rav Hirsch says. Rav Hirsch, of course, had many, many talents, but among his talents, Rav Hirsch, lived in Germany in the 19th century. I think he was nifter in 1888. That would be the 19th century, and he had a congregation, a very strong congregation, and he taught them. He established a school system. He did remarkable things. And one of the things that he did was he wrote almost endlessly, and he says, here's the shoresh, here's the word vihigadta. Okay, there it is, vihigadta. You shall tell. What's the shoresh of vihigadta? Okay, we're not going to get too much into etymology or morphology, but I want you to understand how beautifully he explains what this means. Vihigadta lahagid ki ashar Hashem. That phrase, lahagid, the shoresh is nun, gimel, daled, nagod. The nun drops. The nun is a weak letter. So it may be, at one time it may have been vihingadta, but it is vihigadta here. Here's the shoresh of the word. Now, some of you who are quite familiar with Hebrew know that the word neged means opposite, in front of. What a remarkable term is used here. It doesn't say that the siparta, doesn't say you should tell the story of Mitzrayim. We do have a mitzvah, Yetzias Mitzrayim, but that's not in the pasuk. It says vihigadta, from the word neged. You must not confront your child, but you must be in front of him. He or she needs you there. Those of us who are, of course, we're all going through this pandemic. One of the blessings we have is the very instrument that we're using right now, and that is the instrument of Zoom, and that gives us some ability to actually do things that we could not otherwise have done. But I don't believe anybody can say, "Oh, it's just like being there with the teacher or with the musician or whatever it may be." It isn't just like being there. It's a close replication of what that's like. So I remember last year, and I would imagine the question come up again: can you fulfill the mitzvah of the Pesach Seder through Zoom? So I don't know what the final psak was, but I do know this, that we are not in front of each other when we have that, and because that's the case, it loses. So therefore, it doesn't matter whether it's usually the father, the mother, whatever it is. Whoever is conducting that Seder needs to be in front of the people whom he is addressing and whom she hopes to reach. And that's an important lesson in the word V'yigadta. In addition to that, Rabbi Yoshi ber Soloveitchik has his own observation on this. It's a little bit more Talmudic, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but he says as follows. The whole idea of witnessing is that the witness has to come to Bezdin. The witness has to be in front of the Dayanim. And otherwise, we have a problem of aid mipi aid. Getting secondary testimony is weak and oftentimes just disqualified. So the idea here, and this is called Hagadat Edut, right? It is called literally the telling of, but it is confronting the judges with the testimony. And he says that has to be the concept here in the Seder. Now, our Seder, it's early. I like to think about a Seder when snow's on the ground. It makes me optimistic more. But the thing is that the Seder itself is intended to reenact Yetziat Mitzrayim. You know, most of us look at history as linear, straight line. So 2,000 years ago, the line was long, and then 1,000 years ago, it was less long, and 50 years ago, etc. But Jewish history, Judaism, and we as Jews, as we function with the calendar, do not see history as linear. We see it as cyclical, literally cyclical. We must reenact what occurred those many centuries ago. That, in fact, when you look at it, when you think about the Seder itself, it literally takes us to, and when I say takes us back, not just in memory. It's not enough to be zachor, to remember. There is a mitzvah to remember, but the real mitzvah on the Seder night is to reenact. And that's why Chazal tell us that in addition to remembering, there is a mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, of telling the story of the Exodus of Egypt. We have that. That story is there. But they say, when must you fulfill that mitzvah? You fulfill the mitzvah when matzah and moror is in front of you. Well, we read that in the Haggadah, so we know that. Why so? The answer is, when we talk about the Civil War, we talk about the Revolutionary War, we talk about whatever it is, the War of 1812, or whatever it is, that all that is a summoning of images in our mind. So what the Torah wants for us is more than to summon an image, more than even to be, as I said before, a custodian of Jewish history. That we do every day, but we must reenact it at a certain point. And that is the purpose of the Seder, to reenact. Some people actually put matzah on their shoulder, especially Sephardim. There's a Sephardi minhag, beautiful Sephardi minhag, that the children put matzahs on their shoulders, and they walk into the room, and the father asks them, "May I at them?" And they say, "Where are you leaving Mitzrayim?" and etc. We hope, and where do you want to go? To Yerushalayim. So that is the reenactment, and that lasts much longer. I oftentimes when I talk to teachers who are teaching children who have not grown up in an observant environment at all. I'm not talking about Orthodox conservative reform. No observant environment. So they don't know anything about kashrut. They don't know anything about Shabbat. They don't know anything about many of the things that we love the most. One of the things I ask the teachers to do is to summon of their five senses, of each sense, that which takes you back to your childhood, if they indeed grew up in traditional homes. All right. What smell? The smell of challah. What touch is the touch of the Sefer Torah? Each of them has their own, but they have a memory bank to draw on. But children nowadays, if they don't grow up in an observant environment, so they have no memory bank. They have nothing to draw on. Zachor, the Torah tells us. Memory is extremely important. And when you have memory, verbalization, and actual reenactment, now you have something which can keep the Jewish people alive. Now, let's look at this pasuk. Peric Yud Gimmel, as we've been in, pasuk Chet, V'gata levincha bayom ahu, you shall tell your child on that day, lemor, saying, now here comes the difficult phrase, ba'avur zeh, because of this, Asa Hashem li, God did this, Yetziat Mitzrayim, for me, but B'tzeiti Mitzrayim. Now the question is, what does it mean? Because of this. Because of this. Now in Hebrew, we have two primary ways of saying, indicating that one act causes another, that there is a relationship between two acts. One is the Hebrew phrase biglal hadavar hazeh. Okay, the other one is the very word we have in our pasuk, ba'avur. Okay, so now let's see what Rashi says about this pasuk, ba'avur hadavar hazeh. Ba'avur zeh. Rashi says, ba'avur shakayem mitzvotav. You want to know why we were taken out of Mitzrayim? We were taken out of Mitzrayim for one purpose and one purpose only. Yetziat, to do mitzvot. If you want to know why we were taken out, look at the table. The table is filled with mitzvot, whether it's the matzah, whether it's the morah, whether it's the wine, whether it's the sipor, whatever it is, it's there. And that's the reason God took us out. Otherwise, there would be no reason for him to take us out. Kigon Pesach Matzah Umanor. According to Rashi, that's what it means. The Ramban has a different approach. He says, Ba'avur zeh, because of this, and then She'asa li Hashem, because of this that God did for me, I do this. Different. So the question we have here is more or less a universal question. What's the purpose of mitzvot? Are they a means to an end? Right? A mitzvah is an enabler. When I give tzedakah, so it enables me to become a better person. When I hear the shofar sounded, so it enables me to be a better listener when it comes to things that are important, and so on and so on and so on. Or are mitzvot in themselves ends, an end in itself? God said, I wouldn't have taken you, according to Rashi, and Ibn Ezra, they both say mitzvot are ends in themselves. Don't try to get fancy. There's one reason you were created. You were created to do mitzvot. Very often I'll tell my students, because we live in an age that's like this, they'll often hear me say, you weren't created to go to Harvard. It's true. But of course, all of us at one point or another get very much involved and entangled in things that we think are very important, and we confuse means with ends. So, for example, children, understandably, those who are going to go to college and they know that the acceptance program can be a very rigorous one, so they're nervous. They're very nervous, and they don't realize that's not why you were created. If you get into Harvard, Harvard is a tool. You were created to make the world a better place. Not only is Harvard a tool, so is Loyola, so is any school so is a trade school. They are all nothing more than tools to allow you to do what you were really created for. If you have a gift, as Shlomo Melech says, Kabed et Hashem mehonecha. One of the beautiful, many beautiful mitzvot in Mishle, he says, Kabed et Hashem mehonecha. Honor Hashem with your wealth. What does it mean, wealth? Well, it could mean material, physical wealth. And if you have a beautiful singing voice, or it could mean that if you have a wonderful personality, or if you're some way, or artistic in some way, that is kabed et Hashem mehonecha. So in that sense, of course, each of the mitzvah then becomes a means to an end, the end of being makar of people. But so now, which is it? So it's interesting. Well, this will conclude in a couple of minutes. It's interesting that let's go back to the two words in Hebrew that indicate a causal relationship between two acts. One is the word ba'avur. The other is the word biglal. And Revov Haydn said that what we have, that when the Torah says ba'avur zeh, ba'avur means that all of Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim so that we can do mitzvot. That's it. That's why the word is ba'avur. Ba'avur means, for example, in other words, I study, I would say ba'avur, so that my study will lead to this. I have a goal in mind. I have an objective. And the word ba'avur is the higher objective. This is the act, and now I have a higher objective. So therefore, if you say ba'avur, Hashem redeemed us from Mitzrayim, ba'avur, so that our real life's purpose can be fulfilled by doing mitzvot, matzah, morah, pesach, tzedakah, kindness, all 600 davening, those things. And he says, therefore, we have to understand that from the standpoint of Rashi and the standpoint of Rabbeinu Ibn Ezra, the idea of ba'avur zeh is so that I can do Torah mitzvos. That's why I was reading. The Ramban and others take a different approach, and they say, no, it's ba'avur zeh, ba'avur. You don't have to. You can say that ba'avur means for a certain purpose, but he says, I was taken out of Mitzrayim, I was redeemed, so that I'll be able to do mitzvot, and therefore I do mitzvot out of gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for what he did for me and for my people. So the question is, are these two mutually exclusive? What about the possibility that mitzvot and the giving of mitzvot and the receiving of mitzvot actually can accomplish both? On the one hand, they are means to an end. They are certainly a means to become a better person. I'm a better person because I davened than I would have been. I'm a better person because I davened today than I would have been. I'm a better person today because I did an act of chesed. I'm a better person because I've done whatever I've done. That's true. It's a means to an end. But the mitzvah itself is the end in itself. It means to say, by doing that, I have accomplished an end, one important objective of my life. And so therefore, we're going to be, of course, following in the near future, we'll be following up with, of course, many other mitzvot. Next week, we'll be learning Be'ezrat Hashem Parshat B'Shalach, whether or not we'll deal with this idea of mitzvot, or we've got certainly a number of important and beautiful episodes that took place in B'Shalach. We'll talk about that next. I wish everybody a Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom, and we hope to see you next week in Mitzvah Hashem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. You're welcome, everybody. You're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yoshi, beautiful
Have a
share.
wonderful.
Thank
Okay,
you so much.
everyone. Have a wonderful.